So today I wanted to discuss a complaint that I got from several people that my helping the Monkey on a Stick movie is sensationalizing the problems that have been going on in ISKCON. You're just blowing everything out of proportion. And the same complaint was made when I helped the $400 million child molesting lawsuit. Oh, you're just making things look worse than they actually are. And one of my answers is the Monkey on a Stick movie would have been made with or without me. That's just the way it is. So I just decided to make some input into it because it would have been made without my input, and at least I could try to put a, let's say, truthful spin on the situation, at least somewhat, and try to explain as best I could that Prabhupada and Krishna did not order or desire the situation that happened in ISKCON after the departure of Prabhupada. This was not going according to his wishes or his plan for the society, and it's definitely not something that Krishna or God would have authorized. So, somebody has to explain that. Maybe we can help people understand what really happened. Maybe not, but we just can only do our best in these situations. Now, when it comes to the word sensationalize, the word sensation has many meanings. For example, it means, do you have any sensation when somebody pokes you with a needle? There are people who don't feel any pain. I saw a movie about a person who couldn't feel any pain, and he burned himself very badly, and he didn't know that. So they were sticking pins in his back, and he didn't react. He had no sensation. So sensation means, do you actually feel anything? So the problem in ISKCON, I believe, is that the devotees as a group are desensitized. They don't seem to react the way a normal person would react. Now, if you go up to any person on the street, and you tell them, I know about a religion where they're worshiping homosexuals and pedophiles as messiahs, and the result is a major anal reconstructive surgery epidemic, that average person's jaw would drop, their eyes would bug out of their head, and they would say, what the F is that all about? They would just be shocked and disturbed immediately because it's just unacceptable to the average ordinary person walking down the street. But my experience with many devotees, I would say even thousands of devotees, I come up and say, the GBC is worshiping homosexual pedophiles, and the result is an anal reconstructive surgery epidemic, and they go, yeah, Prabhu, I heard about all that. So what? Don't make waves. Are you causing trouble? You're offending the leaders. Okay, well, that means you have no sensation. So I'm sensationalizing something. Maybe. Yeah, because we're trying to get some impact. We're trying to get some reaction. We're trying to wake people up here. Hey, Prabhu, there's a problem here. No, there's not a problem here. The problem is you. You are the problem. Because you are making waves, and you are bringing attention to problems that no one should be, alerting anybody to. You are creating a crisis when there is no crisis. Okay, but again, the average person would think this is a horrendous crisis. You can't be worshiping homosexual pedophiles as messiahs. It's just not a good idea. And it's going to create a horrendous result, especially for children. It's easy to predict that this is going to cause problems for children. So there's this guy in the hospital, they're sticking pins in his back. He doesn't feel anything because he has no sensation. He has no feelings. So this has been a problem, but it's not only child molesting. If I walk up to devotees and say, Prabhupada said he was being poisoned, oh yeah, Prabhu, yeah, but so what? You're not going to make any waves about that, are you? Oh, we're going to lose our buildings, Prabhu. You can't be saying anything about that. Oh, okay, well, you don't have any feelings. You don't have any sensation. This person says he's being poisoned, And you don't really care. What do you care about? Oh, you care about the buildings. And that's what Krishna Kant and his IRM people and some of the GBC people told me as soon as I came out with the poison issue. Well, Prabhu, we're going to lose our buildings. Oh, okay, you have feelings. You have a lot of feelings. You have feelings for money and bricks and stones. Buildings, you do not have feelings for people, even a person who is a pure devotee. You have no feelings for this person. Now, what's interesting is that when I brought out the poison issue, first, I came out with a sign at Rath Yatra, and I had a little flyer kind of summarizing the situation, and I was handing out this flyer, and the devotees didn't want it. They put their hands up in the air. I don't want to hear about it. Oh, okay. But some ladies in bikinis, okay, they were being dragged along on their roller skates by dogs. They saw me with my pamphlet, and they stopped and says, "What is this?" And I says, "Well, this man said he was being poisoned." And their faces dropped, and they looked very sad, and they said, "Oh, that's horrible. This old man said he was being poisoned. That's terrible." Why? Why did they have that reaction? Because they have feelings. They have sensation for other beings. So it's amazing. The girls on skates in bikinis with their dogs had more feeling for Prabhupada than 99.99% of the devotees who were there. The devotees didn't give a crap, to be honest, and they just saw me as being a nuisance. You are creating a nuisance. You shouldn't be telling people that Prabhupada was complaining of being poisoned, because it's going to hurt our money and our income and our little precious position in the society that worships the poisoners. We're worshiping the poisoners now. That's the system we have established. So don't make waves. Let this system go on. So there's feelings for the wrong thing. And this goes back to when me and Sulochan were originally writing papers, and we were exposing that there's a mass child mistreatment problem going on in ISKCON. And people just hated our literature. We were handing out literature to the devotees. They didn't like it. They didn't want to hear about it. Then, after Sulochan is murdered, devotees are coming up to me saying I inspired him to complain about all this stuff. So I created his murder. I caused him to be murdered because I was encouraging him to challenge the mass child molesting process and the worship of deviants. So it's my fault that this all happened. So that means there's no feelings. The children were being molested, clearly. And Sulochan was murdered because he was complaining about it. And it's my fault all this bad publicity was generated. How is it my fault? No, it means you guys wanted to cover this stuff up, and it had to be forced out into the public. That's the only way we could deal with it. It had to become a public issue. And the same types of things also started to happen when I was having ISKCON sued for $400 million. Devotees were giving me the stink eye. They were really upset with me. There was a whole bunch of leaders standing on the sidewalk on Watsika, people like Giriraj and Hridayananda and Tejas and their lawyers, and all these guys were all standing around. And when I would come by on my bike, they would just give me this stink eye stares and glares. They just hated that I was exposing all this stuff. But would they talk to me about it and say, hey, what's the problem? No. They're not going to talk to me about it. Okay, well then it has to go public. There's no other option. We can't allow all this child molesting to go on and on and on and on without it being challenged. Somebody's got to challenge it. And unfortunately, if you guys don't want to fix it, it has to go into the public. And it did go public, and it did at least partially fix the problem. Many kids were pulled out of GBC schools after the lawsuit was filed. We saved many kids. And some of those kids wrote to me saying I saved their life because this lawsuit resulted in them being pulled out of the ISKCON schools. So we saved them from being in that situation, but we had to do it by making it public. So that means the public has more feelings or more sensation about how children should be treated. The public was not happy with the way ISKCON was treating its children because the public has feelings and sensation for other living beings, especially children. You can't treat children this way. That is known to the public because the public has feelings and sensations, okay, for children. And so the court in Dallas said this is the worst case of child mistreatment we have ever seen in this court. It's horrific. Why did they say that? Because they have feelings for these children. And obviously and self-evidently, the devotees did not have feelings and sentiment for these children, or these children would have never ended up in that situation in the first place. Now, also interesting is when we filed the lawsuit, at that very same exact time, they doubled down on creating trouble for children in India. They brought this Bhaktividya Purnaswamy guy forward all the more and made his program all the more prominent in India. In other words, the mistreatment of children increased even after we filed the lawsuit, which means they had no feelings. Even though it had become public, they didn't say, oh, we have to fix this problem. We have a big problem going on with our children. We have to fix that problem. Nope, we're going to double down. We're not going to talk to Pranjan. We're going to bring more deviants forward in the schools in India and create more trouble. And we're going to have the children worshiping deviants and fools and, all the rest of it all the more. We're not going to change anything. We're going to keep the status quo going because we have no feelings. But there are also many victims, especially children, who tell me no one really knows how horrible the suffering we had to endure was. It was way more horrible than you or anyone else has described. We had to suffer terribly. The children around us were getting abused. We were getting abused. Children were getting beaten up. People were starving us, not giving us enough food, not giving us soap, not giving us medical supplies, not giving us medical attention, not even giving us shoes, and so on and so forth. But meanwhile, of course, the GBC has living like Saudi prince lifestyles for many of them. They have $1 million lifestyles, while the children were not getting basic supplies, at least according to many of these victims. So what does that mean? Again, same thing. It means the massive devotees of ISKCON had feelings for the leaders and for taking care of the leaders and making sure the leaders had an opulent, nice life. But the children, where was the feelings for the care and welfare of the children? It does not seem to have existed hardly at all. How many people were going around saying, what is happening to these children? They weren't worried about the children. They were worried, oh, does Guru Maharaj have a nice new car? Does Guru Maharaj have a nice house? Does Guru Maharaj have a 50-course feast every day? Okay. And the children are eating rotten oatmeal. Well, where's the feelings then for those children? There's the question right there. And if people really had feelings for their children and they found out their children were being molested, why didn't they go to the police? Why didn't they go to the media? Why didn't they start a lawsuit? Why didn't they raise hell about all this stuff? Because they had more feelings for protecting the leaders and not protecting their children. And that is self evident. The leaders were protected and still are protected, and the children, they got the raw end of the deal. And I know hundreds of ex-children victims of this situation, and they just say, we were persona non grata. Nobody cared. The parents didn't care, the leaders didn't care, nobody cared. In other words, there was no feelings for those children, according to those children. So when people say I'm overly sensationalizing everything, no, the problem is there was no sensation or no feelings for the problems that were being experienced by the citizens of ISKCON in the first place. If people had feelings for the women and children and elderly devotees of ISKCON, then all of the banning, the beating, the molesting, the lawsuits, and the murders would never have happened, because it would have been reined in right from the get-go. People would have objected and stopped the worship of these deviants. But they had feelings for promoting the deviants and not feelings for the victims. Now, another group of people like Sanat, Mukunda, Prahlad, ISKCON Jaipur, Mathurapati, these kinds of guys, they all complained that I was driving a taxi and moving around prostitutes and drug dealers and pizzas, and I was using the income from that job to make a newsletter to complain about children getting anal reconstructive surgery. And I was saying there was an epidemic of this problem going on. And they said, well, the real problem is that Paranjan is driving around prostitutes and drug dealers and pizzas in his taxi. That's the problem. There's no problem with the children. They don't even mention the children. Notice, the problem is me. I'm reporting what's happening to the children. So, same thing. No feeling for the children. No mention of the children, really. It's just, I'm bad for reporting the children are being sexually abused in the worst possible way, and being beaten and being starved and being mistreated. That is not a problem. Me having a prostitute and a drug dealer and a bunch of gay people in my taxi cab, and I'm driving them around, and they're paying me, and I'm using some of that money to pay for Sulochan's book to be published and my stuff to be published. That's horrible. We can't be publishing Sulochan's writings. We can't be publishing Paranjan's writings complaining about banning and beating and molesting and lawsuits and murders. We can't have someone complaining about these things, because we have feelings for the leaders who are orchestrating all this stuff. That's where our real feelings are. We love those guys. Now, this also happened at the time of Krishna. There were demon kings doing horrible things, and no one was allowed to report on that or complain about that. The people who complained were repressed. Violently repressed, viciously repressed. You were not allowed to complain about King Kamsa, or you would be in all kinds of trouble. You'd be put into jail, and so on and so forth, because people loved and supported the bad rulers, and they did not like that the bad rulers were being exposed, and people were complaining about that. So this is basically Kali Yuga. As soon as you come out and say the leaders are orchestrating the banning, the beating, the molesting, the lawsuits, and the murders of Vaishnavas, and maybe even they're poisoning a pure Vaishnava, well, that's not the problem. That's not the problem at all, Prabhu. You are the problem, because you are reporting on this, and you should just allow this to go on so that we can worship the people who are making all these crimes happen. We want to worship the criminals. We have feelings for the criminals. We have sentiment for the criminals. And we don't have sentiment for the whistleblowers. The whistleblowers are troublemakers and all the rest of it. So this is what I'm trying to say here. We have a problem of sentiment for the wrong thing. And if you want to find out what is sensational And what is not sensational, just stop any person on the street, any average Joe guy walking down the street and say, we have a religion that worships homosexuals and pedophiles as messiahs, and the result is an anal reconstructive surgery epidemic in children, and banning, beating, molesting, suing, lawsuits, and murders going on. That's the result of all this. What do you think? Well, the average person is just going to completely flip out and think this is a horrific situation which must be stopped immediately. They're not going to say the problem is the whistleblowers. Wait. They're never going to say the problem is the people who are complaining about this stuff. So why? Because they have sentiment for the right thing and righteousness and morality. And therefore they're more in tune with God or Krishna than the average quote-unquote Hare Krishna devotee, who just doesn't even seem to think that there is a problem with all this stuff going on, left, right, and center, all over the place. And after Hansaduta was doing all his antics, he was shooting at buildings, he was having sex with half a dozen women, he was taking drugs. The GBC held an emergency meeting here in Berkeley. And I said, we have to get rid of this guy, Hansaduta. And they said, oh, we can't get rid of Hansaduta because he will take all of his followers and we won't have any money. Money. That's all. So they have sentiment for money. So all this bad behavior in a quote-unquote pure devotee of God, Hansaduta is a pure devotee, quote-unquote, we have to allow all of his nonsense to go on so we can have money. So there's sentiment for money, there's not sentiment for doing the right thing, there's not sentiment for making sure the Vyasa seat, the seat where a pure devotee sits, has only the correct person sitting in that seat. There's no sentiment for that, there's no feeling for that, there's no care for that, because the real concern is for keeping the false institution going. So to sum up then, is the Monkey on a Stick movie overly sensationalizing what happened in ISKCON? It all depends. I mean, I had a very sensational life running around, being chased with baseball bats, and basically having my life in danger most of my life, because these people would kill me or anyone who protests. So that's a very sensational situation. If you have a sensational situation, you have to expect a sensational expose to eventually emerge. There are sensational crimes going on every day that get sensational publicity. And if that is what you're doing, you have to expect sensational publicity. It's almost like the devotees are just disconnected from reality. We can do all these sensational, horrible things, banning, beating, molesting, suing, and killing people, and we are not going to have a sensational reaction. Well, I'm sorry, but you will. And you have to expect that. And if you don't expect that, you are in illusion of the worst order. You cannot have all this going on in your society, left, right, and center, top and bottom, and think there won't be any problem later on. Now, to be fair to the Monkey on a Stick movie, they're just reporting what happened. They may have overly exaggerated this point or that point, perhaps, but many victims would say they underreported what was really going on. Many victims have told me no one has ever heard the horrific things that were really going on with us children. So, there's different ways of looking at this. Was it underreported or overreported? It depends on where you are in the situation. But overall, the Monkey on a Stick movie is the result of the devotees not having feelings, not having sentiment. So if Monkey on a Stick overly sensationalizes something, it's because you guys under-sensationalize all this stuff for years and years and years and years, and you thought you could contain it and just hold it in a box somewhere and keep this Pandora's box closed. But Pandora's boxes are eventually opened. That's just the nature of reality. You know, people can cover up crimes for a long, long time, but sometimes 20 years, 30 years, 50 years later, they find out the real culprits, they find out the real story, and it all comes out. That's just the nature of the world. And that's because Krishna does not want criminals to be going on without their being exposed indefinitely. So if Krishna wanted this to be exposed, it would be exposed, and I believe he wanted it to be exposed, and that's what's happened here. And it's not really in my hands, the whole situation. It's out of control. I have very little control on it, but I did warn everybody, don't allow this to happen, or eventually it will be a big media problem. I was saying that right at the beginning of all this. So if people thought they could get away with all this stuff and it would not have some reaction later on, again, they were in illusion. Anyway, I hope this helps, and I hope people understand you need to have feelings for things. And if you have feelings for supporting bogus gurus and you don't have feelings for the victims, then you're going to end up with a monkey on a stick movie. That's just the way life is. I hope this helps. Hari Hari Bol.